On TennisImageNovak Djokovic is the #1 player in the world and the president of the ATP Player Council. CreditCreditClive Brunskill, Getty ImagesINDIAN WELLS, Calif. Novak Djokovic played his first official tennis match in more than a month on Saturday night, defeating the American Bjorn Fratangelo in straight sets at the BNP Paribas Open. But Djokovic has hardly been taking an extended break from official tennis business. Back at No. 1 in the world by a hefty margin, he is also wielding his renewed clout off-court as president of the ATP Player Council. As a result of his maneuvering, the men's tour is in need of a new chief executive along with some collective purpose and peace of mind, which are likely to remain more elusive than Djokovic and his allies might like. As ever, the tension is between the players, who understandably want to maximize their earnings in a brutally competitive sport, and their paymasters, who own and operate the tournaments and understandably would rather keep prize money under tight rein. But the unusual and inconvenient thing in men's tennis is that the players and paymasters are part of the same internally conflicted organization, the ATP. "We are really blocked," said Gilles Simon, the French player and a former council member. "The structure works against us, and the imbalance being already there between the tournaments and the players, the imbalance endures. Acrimony is inevitable. Progress is not." Last week, Djokovic and the players appeared to send a strong message when the player representatives on the ATP Tour's board of directors voted against extending the contract of Chris Kermode, the ATP's executive chairman and president, who will now be obliged to step down at the end of 2019, but such a political power play is only intimidating if the players are truly united, which seems far from the case. Chris Kermode, the ATP's executive chairman and president since 2014, will have to step down at the end of 2019, credit Jason McCauley. Getty ImagesINDIAN Player Council, in a non-binding vote before the board meeting, could not reach agreement on whether to recommend or reject Kermode's extension. In an age of constant communication, the biggest stars are somehow struggling to connect. Rafael Nadal, a supporter of Kermode and continuity, said his cell phone was primed and ready, but no calls or texts came his way. "This sounds more like high school than a global, professional sport. They are representing us, so normally they have to ask, what's our opinion? Not in every small decision, but in big decisions," Nadal said. "In my opinion, this one was a big decision. The players and the tournaments each have 3 representatives on the ATP board of directors. The chairman, Kermode since 2014, has the ability to cast a tie-breaking vote but would prefer to avoid it when possible for fear of endangering support from one side of the divide. It is a difficult dance even in the best of circumstances, and Kermode seems to have stepped on the wrong feet. Djokovic did not vote him out. That was up to the player representatives that he and the player council have supported or voted into place." David Egnes, a Tennis Channel executive, Alex Inglot, the director of communications at Sportradar, and Justin Gimelstob, the Tennis Channel commentator and former American player, who remains the most polarizing backroom figure in the sport and has remained in place despite facing felony battery charges. Rafael Nadal, foreground, who lost to Djokovic in the final of the Australian Open in January, supported keeping Kermode as ATP president. Credit Scott Barber, Getty Images. Under the ATP's voting system, Kermode needed majority support, at least 2 votes, from each camp to continue. He received all 3 of the tournament representatives' votes but apparently failed to get any of the player representatives' votes. In a letter to ATP staff last week after his ouster, Kermode said it was ironic that he was leaving after the players have achieved some of the greatest gains in the history of the ATP Tour in the past 5 years. Kermode, a former low-level pro player and high-level tournament director, is a polished and genial Briton who knows how to work a room, but apparently not every boardroom. Running the ATP Tour is a compromised position to begin with. The real power in tennis lies with the 4 Grand Slam tournaments, which function independently. Still, he navigated his position of weakness for more than 5 years, securing sponsorships and hard-won prize money increase from the top tier of ATP tournaments. He also led the creation of new events like the Next Gen ATP Finals, designed to promote young players like 19-year-old Canadian Denis Shapovalov, who will eventually have to step out of the ink-black shadow cast by Federer, Nadal and Djokovic. "From what I know of Chris, he was unbelievable," Shapovalov said. But clearly not everyone is in the Kermode fan club. He is seen by some of the players as a tournament guy, a characterization he rejects. Others grumble about his handling of the ATP Cup, which will be relaunched in the opening week of the 2020 season in Australia. Roger Federer, a former president of the Player Council, said he had not been able to talk to Djokovic before a key vote this week. Credit Francois Getty Images. With the new look Davis Cup using a similar format, Kermode tried to avoid a team event glut by working toward a combined event. He was overruled last year by the players. There is also criticism that he did not secure more prize money gains, above all from the 4 Grand Slam events. As council president, Federer once spearheaded a successful push for major increases, but with Grand Slam revenues growing, the concern is that prize money has not kept pace. Federer and Nadal could re-enter the fray. They talked tennis governance over coffee at Federer's rented house here last week. But for now, it is the 31-year-old Djokovic's turn to lead on court and off. He is multitasking at a point in his career when family time is ever more important to him and when he is again on the verge of holding all 4 of the Grand Slam singles titles. "Why bother with tennis politics at this stage?" I asked him. "I tend to ask that myself, as well," he said with a grin. "But I feel that it is my responsibility, in a way, as a top player to contribute to the sport in that way, as well, even if he charts a steadier course in the months to come, putting a more player-friendly ATP chief in place looks all but impossible with the tournament representatives effectively possessing veto power on the board. Changing the governance structure, as Djokovic has suggested, sounds nearly as tricky." Craig Tiley, the chief executive of Tennis Australia and a driving force in the Australian Open's growth, would be a strong ATP leader and has been interested in the chief executive post in the past. But with mutual trust at low ebb and no player union in sight, it is likely a compromise candidate will take over. Sure, tennis needs change and fresh ideas. But when you tear down a building, it seems best to have a clear idea what will stand in its place.